The air was colder than it should have been for late autumn, the kind of chill that crept beneath the skin and settled in the bones. Aaron Whitmore stood at the edge of the long, winding road that led to Hollow Creek, a place most people avoided after dusk. He pulled his coat tighter, staring at the silhouette of the house in the distance. It looked smaller than he remembered, though perhaps that was just the fog that clung stubbornly to the valley. It had been 15 years since Aaron last set foot here. He had sworn he would never return after the night his uncle disappeared, but the letter changed everything. The envelope had arrived without a return address, the handwriting delicate and slanted. It contained only a single sentence. Asterisk, you left something unfinished at Hollow Creek. He had shown it to no one. The gravel crunched under his boots as he began the slow walk toward the house. The trees that lined the path leaned inward as if whispering among themselves, their bare branches scratching together like brittle bones. By the time he reached the front porch, his breath had formed pale clouds in the air, and the house loomed over him in eerie silence. The door was unlocked. That in itself was unsettling. No one had lived here since his uncle vanished, and the property had been left in his name. He had ignored the paperwork, ignored the memories, but now it felt like the house had been waiting for him. Inside, the air was stale and heavy, filled with the scent of dust and faint mildew. Furniture was covered with sheets that sagged in the middle like sunken skin. He pulled one away, revealing the old oak table where he used to sit as a boy while his uncle told strange stories, always half-whispered, about things that moved in the woods and shadows that watched when you weren't looking. Aaron swallowed hard and forced himself to move deeper into the house. His footsteps echoed too loudly, though he tried to tread lightly. The house seemed alive, every creak of the floorboards like a sigh. He went to the study, the room his uncle had forbidden him to enter as a child. The door groaned open, and dust danced in the beam of his flashlight. The walls were lined with bookshelves, each shelf crammed with volumes whose spines were cracked and faded. A thick journal sat on the desk, its leather cover mottled with age. Aaron hesitated before opening it, his hands trembling slightly. The first pages were filled with neat writing, dates scrawled in the margins. At first, the entries seemed ordinary notes about weather, repairs to the house, mentions of nearby townsfolk. But as he flipped further, the writing grew frantic. Voices in the walls again, not mice, not wind. They call me by name. The creek rises at night, though no rain has fallen. It runs red in the moonlight. Must not drink. I see them standing among the trees, too tall, too still. Their eyes do not blink. Aaron's pulse quickened as he turned another page. His uncle's final entry stopped him cold. If I vanish, it will not be by choice. The house will keep what it claims. A sharp thud echoed from upstairs. Aaron froze, his breath caught in his throat. He hadn't touched the staircase, and the wind outside had been silent. Slowly, cautiously, he set the journal down and stepped back into the hall. The stairs stretched upward into shadows. He stared at them, his heart pounding. He told himself the noise could have been a shutter banging loose, but deep down he knew better. Something waited above. With each step, the air grew colder. The second floor smelled faintly of iron, sharp and metallic. He reached the landing, and his flashlight flickered. When it steadied, he saw a door at the far end of the hallway, one he didn't remember from childhood. It was narrow and slightly crooked, as if it had been added after the house was built. The wood looked newer than the rest, pale and raw. His hand shook as he reached for the handle. The door creaked open to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. He frowned, disoriented. The house had no basement. At least, it wasn't supposed to. The air that rose from the opening was damp and heavy, carrying a faint, rhythmic sound, almost like water dripping or breathing. Aaron should have left then. Every part of him screamed to walk away, but the letter still weighed on his mind. Asterisk, something unfinished. Against all sense, he descended. The staircase was longer than it should have been, each step leading deeper into earth. The walls grew damp, lined with stone instead of wood. His flashlight beam wavered over carvings etched into the rock spirals. Jagged lines, symbols he couldn't recognize. At the bottom, he stepped into a cavernous space. The ceiling arched high above, and the floor was slick with moisture. In the center of the chamber stood a pool of water, black and perfectly still. The air buzzed faintly, like a low hum just beyond hearing. Aaron's skin prickled. He took a cautious step closer. The water reflected his face, but then the image shifted. His reflection smiled, though he did not. Its eyes glowed faintly pale, unblinking. He staggered back, nearly dropping the flashlight. The hum grew louder, vibrating in his chest. Shapes began to rise in the water, tall, shadowy forms with elongated limbs. Their faces were blank, smooth as polished stone, yet he felt their gaze pierce him. A voice slid into his mind, soft and cold. "You came back. You belong here." Aaron shook his head violently. "No," he whispered. "I don't belong to this." But the pool rippled, and the shadows moved closer, their forms growing more solid with each step. Panic clawed at him, and he turned to flee, scrambling up the staircase. The air pressed heavy against him, as though the walls themselves tried to slow him down. He burst into the hallway, gasping for breath. The door slammed shut behind him with a sound like a clap of thunder. For a moment, he leaned against the wall, heart racing, trying to convince himself it wasn't real. But the journal's words echoed in his mind. "The house will keep what it claims." He stumbled into a bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it, though he doubted a lock would stop whatever lurked below. The room was coated in dust, but on the bed lay another envelope, identical to the one that had summoned him. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a single page, the same handwriting as before. "You cannot leave, Aaron. You never did." The words twisted his stomach. He rushed to the window, pried it open, and looked down. The drop was steep, but he didn't care. He climbed onto the ledge, ready to jump into the overgrown yard below. Then he saw it. The ground outside was wrong. The trees bent inward in impossible angles, their trunks twisted. The creek that ran past the house glowed faintly, rippling with red beneath the moonlight. And in the yard stood the shadows, dozens of them silent, waiting. Aaron's breath hitched. He stumbled back into the room, slamming the window shut. The house groaned around him, the walls vibrating faintly. He pressed his hands to his head, trying to think, trying to breathe. Then he noticed the mirror. It hung crooked on the opposite wall, the glass cloudy with age. But his reflection was too clear, sharper than it should have been, and it wasn't moving as he did. Aaron froze. His reflection smiled again, slowly raising a hand to point toward him. Behind him, the door handle began to turn.